All right, ready for a deep dive?
Let's do it.
Today, we're going deep into 19th century America
Oh, exciting.
to explore the rise of, you guessed it,
Hmm.
Mormonism.
Yeah, that's a fascinating one.
We've got some really cool sources for this one.
Oh, awesome.
Excerpts from a history podcast with a scholar
Okay.
who pretty much lived and breathed this period.
I can't wait to hear this.
And trust me, it's a wild story. Like,
I bet.
just imagine a group in 19th century America
Okay.
claiming they've got, like, new scriptures, a new prophet, the whole shebang.
Whoa, that's bold.
That's the Mormons in a nutshell.
They definitely didn't play by the rules.
No, they did not, and boy, did they shake things up.
I can only imagine.
So what we're going to try to do today is unpack
Okay.
why they were so controversial,
Right.
how on earth they actually managed to gain statehood.
Which is amazing considering.
Right, exactly, and what their story can tell us about America even today.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah, it's not just some dusty history lesson.
No, not at all.
This stuff is still relevant.
Definitely.
So one of the things that I think is fascinating is this isn't just about religion, you know? It's about a group of people considered so different, so other,
Right.
that they were actually driven from their homes,
Wow.
forced to create like
Bruh.
their own society, their own world out in the American West.
Yeah, talk about resilience.
Exactly. Pioneers facing incredible odds.
For their faith, no less.
For their faith, for their beliefs.
That's powerful stuff.
It is, and our expert actually sets the scene for us
Oh, perfect.
in the winter of 1846.
Okay.
So close your eyes for a second and picture this.
All right.
Thousands of Mormons camped out
Oh.
alongside Native American tribes
Wow.
on the banks of the Missouri River.
So they're heading west.
They're heading west, exactly.
To escape persecution.
To escape persecution, they're looking for a place where they can be themselves.
Where they can finally be free.
Where they can finally be free. But here's the irony.
Yeah.
And this is something our expert points out.
Huh?
They're fleeing religious persecution.
Right?
But at the same time,
Yeah.
they're often lumped in with Native Americans.
No.
Another group that is, at this time, marginalized
For being different, yeah.
for their practices, for their beliefs.
For not fitting the mold.
They're not fitting the mold. And so this really gets at the
Yeah.
heart of what it meant to be considered
Right.
normal in America at the time.
Normal, in quotes, air quotes.
Air quotes, exactly. Who gets to decide that?
A big question.
Right. So to kind of understand this better,
Okay.
we need to rewind the clock a little bit.
Right.
Go back to 1830.
Okay.
And we find ourselves in Western New York.
Okay.
And this is where a guy named Joseph Smith,
Oh, yeah, the founder.
of Mormonism,
I've heard of them.
publishes the Book of Mormon,
Right.
which we'll get into that in a second. But
Right.
it's not just any place. This is what they called, at the time, the burned over district.
The burned over district. Why is that?
Because think of it like dry tinder,
Okay.
just waiting for a spark.
Hmm.
This region was on fire with religious revivalism.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, they were going through what they called the Second Great Awakening.
Interesting.
And it was this huge pushback against the Age of Enlightenment.
Oh, I see.
All that emphasis on reason and science.
Makes sense.
People were really looking for something more.
Yeah, a deeper meaning.
A deeper meaning, a connection to the divine.
Total. Yeah.
And that's where Joseph Smith steps in
Okay.
into this supercharged atmosphere and claims that he's unearthed
Unearthed what?
these ancient golden plates.
Golden plates.
Golden plates?
What? Like buried treasure?
Kinda, but the treasure on these plates is a whole new scripture.
Whoa. Okay.
The Book of Mormon.
The Book of Mormon, I've heard of it.
And
But
what is it, Earl?
yeah, what's the deal with that?
Well, it reads like a biblical epic,
Really?
full of stories of warring brothers, divine revelation,
Wow.
and a history spanning continents and centuries.
No kidding.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the stories themselves are worth a deep dive sometime. We might have to do that.
I'd listen to that for sure.
But what's key here is that Smith positions himself as a modern-day prophet.
A modern-day prophet.
Receiving direct revelation from God.
Now, that's a bold claim.
Yeah, I mean, talk about shaking things up.
Right.
This really shook up the established Christian denominations.
Oh, I bet.
They saw him as a threat. Like, who is this guy?
Coming out of nowhere?
Coming out of nowhere, claiming to speak for God.
And with new scripture.
And with new scriptures, I mean...
That's going to ruffle some feathers.
It ruffled a lot of feathers.
Yeah, I can see why.
But the controversy, it runs deeper than just a new prophet.
Okay.
You know? on the block.
There's got to be more to it.
There's got to be more to it. There are, at least.
3 core reasons why Mormonism was considered downright scary.
Scary, huh?
By mainstream America.
All right, lay it on me.
Okay, so first,
Number 1.
their view of God was totally different.
How so?
Instead of this distant, judgmental God of Calvinism.
Like the fire and brimstone type?
Yeah, fire and brimstone, predestination, all that.
Yeah, yeah.
Mormonism presented a God that was personal, approachable.
Approachable.
Very involved in people's lives.
A more loving God, maybe?
Maybe a more relatable God.
Interesting.
So like a divine buddy you could hang out with.
Okay, I see the contrast.
That's definitely not what the Puritans were preaching.
No, not at all.
So that's one. Then there's the idea that
Okay, what's number 2?
God still speaks to people today.
Oh, okay.
Directly. No need for intermediaries, no need for fancy church hierarchies.
That's got to shake things up.
Oh yeah, that ruffled a lot of feathers.
I bet it did.
All right, you ready for the third one? Hit me with it.
This one's maybe the most unsettling.
Oh boy.
The concept of exaltation.
Exaltation. What's that?
The Mormons believed that humans could actually become gods themselves.
Wait, become gods?
Become gods, like level up in a video game.
Wow.
Reach godhood.
Whoa. That's a whole other level.
It's a whole other level, and this idea
Yeah.
shattered the traditional Christian view
Yeah, no kidding.
of God and humanity.
So you're saying, it, like,
Yeah.
for Mormons, polygamy wasn't just about having multiple wives.
Right, it was about something bigger.
It was about becoming more like God.
More like God, mirroring that divine nature.
Wow. That's a radical idea.
A radical idea, right. But to really get this,
Yeah.
we need to kind of picture 19th century America.
Right.
Like a club.
Okay, a club.
With very strict rules.
Strict rules. Got it.
And that's what they called normative Protestantism.
Normative Protestantism.
A dominant belief system.
The dominant belief system.
That shaped everything from laws
to social norms.
to everyday life.
To everyday life, to what you could wear.
I see, the dress code.
The dress code, exactly.
So where do the Mormons fit in?
The Mormons. They were definitely not following the dress code.
Not even close.
No, not even close. They were like showing up in ripped jeans and a T-shirt.
To a black tie event.
To a black tie event. They were rocking the boat.
And that's not going to fly.
No, it did not fly. And their journey westward is a testament
to what?
To the fierce opposition they faced.
They weren't exactly welcomed with open arms.
Not at all. I mean, from New York to Ohio, Missouri.
Wow, they kept moving.
And then Illinois, they were constantly on the move.
Constantly persecuted.
Constantly persecuted, looking for a place to be.
To find peace.
To find peace, to practice their faith.
Right.
And it all happened so fast.
Really?
Just 8 years.
8
years after the Book of Mormon was published.
Wow, that's quick.
The governor of Missouri issued an extermination order.
An extermination order. Against the Mormons.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. This wasn't just disagreement.
This is serious?
This was state-sanctioned violence.
That's terrifying.
It's a dark chapter in American history.
For sure.
And it raises a key question.
What's that?
What made the Mormons a cult? In the eyes of 19th century America.
Right.
And to be clear, the term cult wasn't always negative back then.
Oh, interesting.
It reflected their status as a new, unorthodox movement.
Challenging the status quo.
Challenging the norms, the accepted norms.
I see.
So we have a governor in
1838
calling for the extermination
That's insane.
of an entire religious group.
That's heavy stuff.
It's heavy stuff. And the Hans Mill Massacre, where a mob murdered Mormon men, women, and children, is a chilling example.
That's horrific.
Of how dangerous this prejudice became.
Wow, it's hard to believe.
It is, but the conflict was about to escalate even further. Because in 1844, Joseph Smith was murdered by a mob in Illinois.
Murdered, wow.
This was a turning point.
A turning point how?
That threw the future of the entire movement into question.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like what happens now?
What happens to the Mormons?
What happens to the Mormons? Their leader is gone.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm hooked.
Enter Brigham Young.
Brigham Young, okay.
Smith's successor.
The new leader.
And Young was a completely different type of leader.
How so?
Where Smith was all about revelation and new ideas.
A visionary.
A visionary. Young was more of a pragmatist, a builder.
A doer.
A doer. So this shift from constant revelation to structure and organization was crucial.
Crucial for what?
For their survival.
It's like they had to adapt.
They had to adapt. They had to become...
more practical, maybe.
More practical, yeah.
To survive.
To survive. So Young takes the reins and makes a bold move.
What's that?
He decides to lead the Mormons west.
West, like further west.
All the way to the Salt Lake Valley.
Wow, that's a long way.
That's a long way. They were searching for a place to practice their faith freely.
To finally be free.
To finally be free, to build a society.
Away from persecution.
Away from persecution, far away.
Wow. Talk about a leap of faith.
It's a huge leap of faith.
They were putting everything on the line.
They were, but their relationship with Native Americans during this time adds another layer of complexity.
How so?
Well, the Mormons saw themselves as allies.
Allies with the Native Americans.
With the Native Americans.
Interesting.
They were both on the fringes.
Yeah, outsiders.
Of the dominant culture.
I see.
And they even used the term Lamanites.
Lamanites, that's from the Book of Mormon.
From the Book of Mormon to describe Native Americans.
Wow, they really saw a connection.
They did, but at the same time, their interactions were also marked by colonization.
Colonization.
Taking land and trying to convert indigenous populations.
To Mormonism.
Mormonism.
So it's complicated.
It's very complicated.
Not a simple black and white situation?
Not at all. And the federal government was not exactly thrilled.
I bet not.
About this seemingly independent, theocratic society.
A society within a society.
Growing in the West.
Yeah, that's a challenge to their authority.
Exactly. The Mormons, like Native Americans, were seen as a threat.
A threat to what?
To national unity. To the rule of law.
The American Project.
The American Project, but there was one particular practice that really set off alarm bells.
Oh boy, what was that?
Polygamy.
Polygamy, yeah, that was a big one.
Huge point of contention.
And still is, for some.
For some, yeah. But to understand its significance, we need to look beyond...
Beyond what?
The simple idea of it being about patriarchal dominance.
Yeah, there's more to it than that.
There's a deeper theological reasoning here.
All right, let's unpack that.
Okay, so Joseph Smith's reasoning for polygamy was rooted in this idea of embodied divinity.
Embodied divinity?
Right. Remember, he believed humans were essentially embryonic gods.
Embryonic gods.
Sharing the same physical nature as God.
So polygamy, in this context, was a way...
to become more like God.
To mirror that divine nature?
To mirror that divine nature, to transcend earthly limitations.
Wow, that's a whole other perspective.
It is, but despite its theological basis, polygamy became a defining characteristic of Mormonism.
And a major source of controversy.
And a lightning rod for persecution.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like the Utah War of 1857.
The Utah War, tell me about that.
Where the U.S. Army marched on Salt Lake City.
Marched on Salt Lake City.
That shows you how far the government was willing to go.
Wow.
To suppress the practice.
To control this defiant territory.
To control this defiant territory, yeah, and the conflict. Yeah.
With the U.S. government. Was just heating up.
Oh, no.
Next time, we'll see how the Mormons used a surprising strategy.
Surprising strategy.
To try and win over their critics.
I can't wait to hear this. Welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about how the Mormon Church ultimately renounced polygamy as a condition for Utah's statehood.
Yeah. Big decision.
It wasn't a simple decision.
Right.
And the impact of that choice is still felt today.
It's like you were saying before.
Yeah.
For many Mormons, polygamy was deeply tied to their belief in exaltation.
Yeah, that idea of reaching godhood.
Right, becoming like God.
Giving that up.
Yeah.
Must have felt like giving up a core part of their identity.
A huge sacrifice.
Precisely.
Especially since, like, Joseph Smith.
Right, the founder.
Believed that God himself wasn't just
some abstract spirit,
right,
but had a physical embodied form.
Embodied.
Just like humans.
So polygamy then wasn't just about marriage or family.
It was about something bigger.
It was a way to become more like God.
More like God, yeah.
To mirror that divine nature.
Wow, okay. So you're trying to build bridges with mainstream America.
Right.
That's a tough sell.
It definitely challenges how we tend to think about polygamy today.
For sure.
And For Mormons, who
Yeah.
believed it was
Yeah.
essential for their salvation,
Essentially,
giving it up must have been
incredibly difficult.
incredibly difficult.
The Mormons got their state, but at what cost?
Right, exactly.
This compromise over polygamy caused a deep rift.
A rift.
Something you still see today.
Oh, interesting.
With fundamentalist Mormon groups who refused to abandon the practice.
They held on to that belief.
They held on to that belief.
Absolutely.
So the legacy of that compromise is still very much alive.
Very much so.
But stepping back for a moment, it's important to remember
what's that?
That the Mormons weren't the only ones struggling with what it meant to be American in the 19th century.
It was a time of great change.
True. The whole country was in a state of upheaval.
Upheaval? How so?
Westward expansion. Industrialization. Mass immigration.
So much change.
It was a time of immense change.
Yeah.
And social anxiety.
People were scared.
People were scared of the unknown.
Absolutely.
And religion was at the heart of a lot of that anxiety.
Interesting.
New religious movements like Mormonism, along with waves of Catholic and Jewish immigrants, really challenged the dominance of that normative Protestantism.
That dominant belief system.
We talked about earlier.
The club with the strict rules.
It's like everyone was suddenly questioning the rules of the club.
And that made those in power pretty nervous.
Very nervous.
They didn't like that.
They did not like that one bit.
So the Mormons... with their unconventional beliefs.
And practices.
They became an easy target.
Scapegoat.
For those anxieties.
For those anxieties, they were labeled as...
What?
Dangerous.
Dangerous, un-American.
Un-American.
A threat to the social order.
They were othered.
They were othered, and those labels could have deadly consequences.
Deadly consequences.
The Missouri Extermination Order. The Hans Mill Massacre.
Oh, that was horrific.
Joseph Smith's murder. It's a stark reminder.
Of what?
Of how quickly intolerance can turn violent.
It's a scary thought.
It is. It's like the rhetoric used to dehumanize other marginalized groups.
Throughout history.
Create an other... Paint them as less than human.
Less than human.
And suddenly violence becomes easier to justify.
The chilling pattern.
It is. But despite this relentless pressure, the Mormons persisted.
They didn't give up.
They did not give up. Their story is a testament
to
human resilience. And adaptation.
They had to adapt.
They had to adapt. They migrated thousands of miles.
Thousands of miles.
Built thriving communities. In harsh environments.
In the desert.
In the desert. And eventually found a way to integrate into the American fabric.
What a story.
It's incredible. And it wasn't just about survival. They actively tried to shape.
Shape what?
How they were perceived.
They were playing the game.
They were playing the game, so to speak.
Trying to fit in.
Trying to fit in, trying to show that they could be...
Good Americans.
Good Americans.
That's an insightful observation.
As they faced increasing scrutiny.
Scrutiny about?
Particularly around polygamy.
Yeah, that was a big one. Mormon leaders strategically emphasized...
Emphasized what?
Their patriotism.
Patriotism.
Their work ethic. Their family values.
Family values.
They wanted to prove that they could be...
Model Americans.
Model Americans.
Even as they held on to beliefs that many found...
strange.
Strange or threatening.
It's a classic example of strategic assimilation.
Strategic assimilation.
Adopting aspects of the dominant culture.
To gain acceptance.
To gain acceptance and protection.
Right, to survive.
But I wonder, did that strategy always work in their favor?
That's a great question.
Didn't it create internal conflicts? Tensions within?
Within the Mormon community.
It's a complex issue.
Yeah.
On one hand...
it did help them...
achieve statehood?
Achieve state...
not become part of mainstream...
American society.
American society?
But on the other hand... it required reinterpreting... or even downplaying certain aspects
of their theology.
Which
alienated some members.
And led to
the rise of those fundamentalist groups we discussed.
So assimilation isn't a simple solution,
Yeah.
It's more of a trade-off.
Of a trade-off.
Gaining acceptance can come at the cost of
internal division.
Internal division and a loss of
certain traditions.
Traditions or beliefs.
Exactly.
And this tension.
Tension between what?
Between maintaining a distinct identity and trying to fit into
a larger society.
A larger society.
Is something many minority groups
still struggle with.
Today. It's not just about Mormons in 19th century America.
It's a universal human story.
It is.
That's what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
It's not just about the past.
No.
It's about understanding.
These timeless challenges.
Timeless challenges of identity, belonging, and navigating a world.
Where difference is often met with suspicion.
Fear. Those are big questions.
They are.
But before we get too philosophical. There's one more aspect. Of the Mormon story, we need to address their relationship with Native Americans.
Oh, right.
It's a complicated history.
It really is.
To say the least.
On the one hand, Mormons saw themselves as allies.
Allies
with Native Americans.
Interesting.
Both groups.
Yeah.
Marginalized. By a dominant
Protestant culture,
right?
They even believed
what?
Based on their Book of Mormon. That Native Americans were descendants of ancient Israelites.
Yeah.
So there was a sense of
kinship,
a shared destiny.
Yeah. To some extent, yes.
But at the same time,
the Mormons were also part of
westward expansion. Pushing into Native American lands.
They took land.
Sought
to convert
Native Americans
to their faith.
To Mormonism.
And sometimes even engaged in violence.
Violence against them.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Are you saying that the Mormons were trying to become
more American? By adopting white supremacy?
Yeah. Certainly complex and uncomfortable.
Part of their history.
While they identified with Native Americans as fellow outsiders, they also participated in the systems
that oppressed them.
It's a reminder
of what?
That power dynamics
are rarely simple. In groups that have experienced oppression.
Can also become oppressors.
Themselves. It's messy.
And nuanced situation.
For sure.
We can't romanticize the past.
No.
Or pretend these power dynamics doesn't exist.
And it's important to acknowledge.
What's that?
That the impact of Mormon settlement
on Native American communities
continues
to this day.
Many
tribes in the West
are still dealing with
a legacy of
displacement,
assimilation,
loss of their ancestral lands.
It's a reminder that history
isn't just something
in textbooks.
It continues to shape
the present.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to the question we posed earlier.
The question of
what can we learn from the Mormon experience?
That is relevant to our own time. Well, it's easy to get caught up in the details of
19th century history and forget that these themes
of
religious freedom,
cultural clashes, and the struggle
for
belonging
are still very much alive.
Today,
think about
the ongoing debates over
religious liberty, the anxieties around immigration and multiculturalism, the rise of fundamentalist movements
across different faiths.
It's like we're still wrestling with the same fundamental questions
that the Mormons
and their contemporaries faced. Like,
what does it mean?
What does it mean to be American?
Where do we draw the lines?
Lines of tolerance?
How do we balance individual freedom
with the needs of a diverse society?
It feels like.
Yeah.
These questions are
even more relevant
now than ever. I agree.
And while the Mormon experience
might not offer you easy answers,
it does provide a valuable case study.
In how way?
With a group with seemingly radical beliefs,
navigated these tensions, adapted to
changing circumstances,
and ultimately found a place
in themselves
within the American narrative.
It's a story full of contradictions, compromise, and hard-won victories.
And as we wrap up this deep dive,
I'm struck by the resilience
of
the human spirit
and the power of belief
to shape not just
individual lives,
but
the course of history.
That's beautifully put.
The Mormon story is a powerful reminder
that
even when facing
persecution,
discrimination, and immense pressure to conform,
the human spirit
can find a way
to thrive,
adapt,
and make its mark
on the world.
And
before we go, we've got some fantastic resources.
Oh, perfect.
Linked in the show notes.
If you'd like to explore this topic further,
there are books, articles, even documentaries
to delve deeper
into the Mormon experience
and its ongoing legacy. Okay, so we're back
again
for the final part of our deep dive into 19th century Mormonism.
It's been a wild ride.
It has been. We've covered a lot.
From those fiery beginnings in the burned-over district
to their incredible journey westward,
the
controversy over polygamy.
Yeah, a lot of controversy.
Their often tense relationship with the U.S. government.
It's been quite a journey.
It has, and honestly, we've just scratched the surface.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
There are so many layers to this story.
So many.
But as we wrap up, I'd like to focus on something we touched on earlier. The lasting impact.
The lasting impact
of the Mormon experience.
On both American society and how we understand
the religious freedom
today.
It's so easy to think of this
as just another historical event.
To put it in a box and put it on a shelf.
But their story really makes you think about
faith,
tolerance, and what's considered acceptable
in a diverse society.
It's relevant today.
It's still relevant today.
Absolutely.
The Mormon experience
forces us to confront some
uncomfortable
truths about American history.
It reminds us
that those cherished ideals
of religious freedom
and tolerance
haven't always been extended
to everyone,
especially whose beliefs fall outside the mainstream.
It's like that exclusive club we talked about earlier.
With a strict dress code?
For what's considered acceptable religion.
And anyone
who doesn't fit in scrutiny and even hostility.
And sadly, this isn't just
a relic of the 19th century.
Think about prejudice
and discrimination.
Muslim, Sikhs,
other religious minorities.
In America today.
It's heartbreaking.
It is.
But it's a pattern.
That keeps repeating itself.
The tendency to label certain groups
as other,
to view their beliefs dangerous or un-American,
is a thread
that runs through our history.
A Mormon story
is a powerful cautionary tale.
It really is.
And it also
makes you think about the price of assimilation.
The Mormons gained acceptance
by renouncing polygamy.
But for many,
it was a devastating compromise.
How much
should
a group have to change?
How much of their identity
should they have to sacrifice?
Just to fit in?
It's a tough question.
With no easy answer.
The Mormon story shows us
that assimilation
is never simple.
It's a balancing act
between holding on to your unique identity
and adapting
to the dominant culture
to survive.
Exactly. That constant negotiation
is something
many minority groups
are still grappling with.
Not just in America,
but around the world.
It's a universal human experience.
That's what makes this deep dive
so powerful.
It's not just about the past.
It's about understanding
the complexities
of identity, belonging,
and navigating a world
where difference is often met
with fear and suspicion.
But let's not end on a completely somber note. Despite facing incredible persecution,
the Mormons built
a thriving
and resilient community.
They literally transformed
a desert
into a flourishing state
and contributed
to the growth and diversity
of the American West.
Their story
is an incredible testament
to human resilience,
ingenuity,
and the power of faith.
It's a message of hope
for anyone who feels
an outsider,
anyone whose beliefs are
misunderstood or marginalized. Their story tells us
you're not alone.
Your story matters.
And even in the face of adversity,
you have the power
to create something
meaningful and lasting.
If you're feeling inspired
to learn more
about this fascinating chapter
in American history,
check out the resources
we've linked in the show notes.
There are books, articles, and documentaries
that will take you deeper
into the Mormon experience
and its lasting legacy. And as you explore those resources,
keep asking those tough questions.
Challenge your assumptions.
And consider all the different perspectives
that shape how we understand the past.
History isn't just about dates and names.
Yeah.
It's about the human stories
that continue to shape our world today.
Thank you for joining us
on this deep dive
into 19th century Mormonism.
We hope you'll join us next time
for another fascinating journey
into the past.